Welcome to your Daily 5 for Monday, November 11th, 2024. I'm pretty sure, I know I reviewed the first episode of the Adult Swim adaptation of the Uzumaki manga by Junji Ito. I don't think I ever talked about the second episode, at least not in the show anywhere, which there was a lot of controversy and online drama around the fact that there was a quality dip from the first episode to the second one. There apparently was something that happened in the background of the making of the show. I didn't really care then. I still don't care now. And when I watched the second episode, yes, you could tell that there was a difference in the quality, but it certainly wasn't what I would describe, not nearly as terrible as some of these people made it out to be. Certainly not enough for me to care because the rest of the adaptation is stellar. And I've now finished the entire thing, all 4 episodes. And after you get from 1 to 2, you might notice, I think I noticed the animation difference for maybe 3 minutes, and then I didn't care anymore. And then because the rest of the episodes are all similar to 2, I really just forgot about it because the reality is, the animation, I mean, don't get me wrong, if it was truly terrible, then that would derail the series. But it really isn't. It's not such a step down in quality that suddenly you can't watch it. I'm sorry, I know people just love to get upset about things all the time, and there are cases where it is justified, but this is not one of them. The quality dip is not that bad. What actually is great is that it is a fantastic adaptation of that story. I was really impressed with how they got this, because Ito's stuff it has this very specific tone, and it's very hard to articulate, at least for me. I'm sure others have done it better. But it comes up to the line of being pure horror, but it never really, I mean, it dips in and out, but instead it just is, there's a constant unsettling nature to everything, almost a background hum, where there's just something off about everything. And that's really true of the world and the characters. I mean, you have characters that see something horrific, and then the next minute they're talking about something mundane, like if they're going to run away together or something like that. And then they turn around, they see something horrific, and they react naturally to it, horrifically. And then, they're going to school the next day. And that's kind of what I like about Uzumaki and Ito's stuff, is there's this weird kind of balance to it where you don't, realistically, would everybody just go back to normal with all these weird things happening? Probably not. And yet it doesn't ever seem unnatural. And maybe it's a culture difference where, certain things to certain cultures don't seem as out of place as they do to people who aren't as familiar with the culture. So maybe the idea that a person who turns into a snail and goes up the side of a building is not as odd in other places as it would be here, although I kind of think it would be. But it doesn't matter. It's just such a fantastic adaptation of Uzumaki. And I really, again, the quality dip, I don't care. I don't think most people really care as much as they said they did. Yes, is it disappointing that it didn't stay up to the standard of the first episode? Sure, of course. We all want things to be the best version they can be. But again, everything else is done so well that I don't think one element being slightly lesser, and not even bad, just slightly lesser, is enough to stop the series just being fantastic. I would say outside of the original comic itself, this is probably the best adaptation I've seen of it, even better than the live-action film, which I quite like. I know people have problems with it, but I like the Uzumaki live-action film. But this is unquestionably better because they really took the important art cues from the comic. They managed to keep that weird, just short of being pure horror tone, or at least they managed to balance it correctly. And there is this absurdity to certain things where it really shouldn't be almost as funny as it is, and yet it is because it's so odd. And all of those things mixed together to make a really, really fantastic adaptation. And the nice part is now it exists in multiple mediums because there are some people who don't like animation. Well, they can watch the live action film. There are some people who just prefer the comic. Well, that's great. Read the comic. And now you have what I would call a fairly great adaptation, all things considered, of Uzumaki. So this is kind of one of those best of all scenarios type of thing in general, where you can experience this story in pretty much any medium you choose. And so, like I said, quality issues aside, and I would say that about the live action one too, because there's omissions people don't like from the live action version and changes. I didn't care before. I won't care. I would still watch the live action one. But I would say as far as between the animation and live, if you were going to pick one, this is certainly the more faithful of the two. And again, I think that this series, I like that it's broken into 4 parts. It works really well. And I'm actually really surprised because there's been attempts to adapt his stuff before and it hasn't always worked perfectly. But Uzumaki, the Adult Swim version, yeah, I could recommend it without any hesitation. Later.